All right, everybody. My name's Joe, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I don't know if that's a good thing, being highly recommended at an AA meeting or not, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm so glad to be here. There's a few people on here I have just the utmost respect for. Bill W. out of Florida, Jason, there's a couple other people, but I consider Bill to be a friend and a confidant of mine for at least the last 38 years that he's been sober. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Bill. Thanks, Bill. I love you, man. I thought to myself, what am I going to talk about? And you think, well, you know your story, don't you? I mean, what do you mean, what are you going to talk about? Well, I've been sober since October the 5th, 1978. I just celebrated 45 years of sobriety. And it's actually harder to tell my story now than it was when I was new. When I was 2 years sober, it was a piece of cake to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. But now I have to stop. I have to be a little bit particular about what I want to talk about, because what do I talk about? You're 43. How about you're 37? 26. How about 19? You see what I'm saying? So there's so many changes in my life. I tend to talk about what's current in my life, and I have different themes in my head from time to time, and I'll run them out for a while. So I don't usually tell my story in chronological order, but I do tell it in a general way. Lately, there's been a bunch of people leaving AA this past year, a lot of people. With many years of sobriety. There was a woman that had 40 years of sobriety, went back out. And one of the people that she sponsored called her up a week after she'd started drinking and said, "Do you think you're powerless yet?" And she said, "No," and hung up on her. A couple of weeks later, she called her and said, "You think you're whooped? Are you beat?" And she says, "No, and don't ever call me again." Click. You go from 40 years of AA is the most important thing in your life to don't ever call me again. Wow. There's another woman with 15 years, wonderful gal. I saw her about 8 months ago at a meeting. And you know how you go to meetings that you haven't been to in a while just to see different people, you know. And I went to the meeting and there she was. And I said, "Hey, Linda, how you doing?" She said, "Well, I haven't been here in 6 months." And I said, "Well, neither have I. I just came down here just to see different faces." She said, "No, I've been drinking for the last 6 months." I said, "You have? How long were you sober when you started to drink?" And she said, 3 days before my 15th anniversary. And she said, "I don't even want to be sober." I said, "Then why are you here?" She said, "Joe, I know I should be sober. I know I should want to get sober. But in the last 6 months, I lost my marriage, my home, my kids won't talk to me anymore. I lost my car. I have no money. And I'm here tonight." And she said, "The damnedest thing is I have no desire to get sober or stay sober at all." And you go from 15 years of AA is the most important thing in my life to I can't even get the desire back. And I said, "Well, you know where we're at if you ever feel you need us. It's always good to see you." I mean, what do you say to that? What do you say to somebody that doesn't have a desire to stay sober? Another guy I heard not too long ago, and I used to tell people if they're not convinced, go out and drink more, but I've kind of changed my tune on that. I just tell them to keep coming back, because this guy had been sober 7 years and he started backing off of AA meetings. And he told his wife, "I'm going to go drink on Friday. I'm going to go back to AA Monday." And he says, 23 years later, my sister came and found me in a tent under an overpass on I-75 in Georgia, in Atlanta. And she brought me back to Cincinnati out of the kindness of her heart. And she owns some apartment buildings. And she gave me an apartment to live in until I got on my feet. And my neighbor happened to be a member of AA. And I've been sober 90 days now. And he says, "I don't know how I'm doing it, but I know I'm sober 90 days. That guy was going to go out on a Friday. He didn't come back for 23 years. I don't tell people to go drink again. I don't do that anymore. And one other fella, very successful, but he had 7 years of sobriety at one time. And he started drinking, and he couldn't get back to AA for 16 years. He said, "I tried everything. I was willing to go to any length. My God, I went to psychiatry. I went to therapy. I went to treatment. I went to religion. I was willing to do anything and I couldn't stay sober. I just couldn't do it. I tried, I gave it my best shot. And he says, I've been sober 90 days now in AA. He said, I'm going to try to keep doing what I've been doing here. Now, do I think the guy's going to stay? Hell, I don't know. Nobody knows who's going to get sober and stay sober. But I guess the reason I shared those things with you, even though I've been sober 45 years, I think the most precious gift that I have is my desire to stay sober. I remember going in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, wanting to get sober, wanting to get sober. I remember getting really badly beaten up from alcoholism, and I couldn't get sober. I just couldn't do it. And I'm here not so much to carry a message to you, but to fan the flame of my own desire to stay sober. I don't ever want to lose that desire. I'm 69 years old. I got sober when I was 23. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be an old man in a sleeping room like I was when I was 23, with all my belongings of my whole life on a dresser, the picture of a family that won't talk to me anymore, people that I used to be friends with in AA that don't call me anymore. And I'm sitting there going, I know I should be sober. I know I should want to get sober, but God damn it, I can't, I don't want to go back to AA. I don't want to stop drinking. I can't even if I want to. That would be a terrible way to live out the rest of my life. And that's why I'm your speaker tonight. Not because I have a great message. It's just that I value my desire to stay sober more than anything I can think of. We were reading the chapter, A Vision for You, the other day, and I loved it. I've read it many, many times over the years. I wanted to read you this paragraph and tell you what came to my mind. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us, those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. And I heard that the other day, and I just saw it and I heard it different. For most normal folks, that means non-alcoholics, they go to the dance and they happen to have a drink or two, and it enhances them being at the dance. Me, I'm already drinking and I happen to show up at the dance. And we're all dancing out there having a good time at the same time. And you can't tell the difference between them and me at that time in my life. But as time went by, I was not able to make it to the dance anymore. And those people at the dance would come out and say, what are you doing in the bushes? Weren't you going to come to the dance? I go, yeah, well, I was looking for conviviality and companionship, but I overshot the mark. Maybe next time I'll get to the dance. And they thought I was going to make it to the dance the next time, and so did I. But the reason I'm an alcoholic is I'm never going to make it back to that dance, ever again. Alcohol didn't do for them what it did for me, and it didn't do to them what it did to me. I've been around, my wife's been in Al-Anon 38 years. Yeah, she's been Al-Anon 38 years. And I've been to some of those dinner parties where I watch those non-alcoholics drink, and they get a little giggly and they get a little goofy, and they say stuff like, oh, I'm starting to feel it, I don't want it anymore. Or I'm getting hot, or I'm getting dizzy, and I don't react like that. I'll tell you the way I react. When I drink alcohol, it changes the way I see the world without changing the world at all. I remember I was 13 years old. I was invited to a party where a bunch of juniors and seniors, and they were smoking pot back then. It was the 60s. That was the big thing back in the 60s. Young kids were smoking pot. And I was smoking pot, and they gave me this big bottle of Bali High wine. I drank the Bali High wine. I went into that party feeling kind of inadequate and inferior and insecure. And by the time I left that party, I knew they were glad that I came. I felt 17 and 18. It changed the way I saw the world without changing the world at all. And it doesn't do that for most people. Most people, it doesn't change the way they see the world. It just makes them feel a little giggly and goofy and, oh, I'm glad to see you, and ha ha ha. Me, I went in inferior and I came out superior. That's alcoholism. I remember getting the letters from the collection agencies in the mail with the red type on it. We're going to sue you. We're going to take you to court. I go, oh my God, what am I going to do about that? I'd have a few slugs of Jack Daniels. I'd rip that paper up and throw it over my shoulder and say, you'll get yours when I get mine. And it would just change the way I saw the world. It didn't make the bills go away, but it changed the way I saw the bills. And that's alcoholism. And most alcoholics will be able to identify with that. You know, we have a chapter called The Doctor's Opinion, and he talks about, he thinks it's an allergy, and it's an opinion. He'll tell you it's an opinion. I think the thing that makes us alcoholic is it changes the way we see the world without changing the world at all, no matter how much we drink. And at the end, we end up in the bushes, not being able to make it to the party, and it's not changing anything anymore. And I have to drink and can't stop. And that's alcoholism for me. I came to AA for the first time at 22 years old. I was living on Skid Row. I was living in a building. I was the only one under 65. And we all shared the same toilet and bathtub on the second floor. I had a bare mattress on the floor for a bed and a cardboard box turned upside down for an end table. I had plastic curtains with grease on the blinds. I had a light that hung from a wire on the ceiling, and alcohol was still working for me. It changed the way I saw the world without changing the world at all. I'd come in buzzed and I'd see that end table, my box, and I'd throw those keys and my 9 cents on the end table. And I'd say, a box? And alcohol would say, hey, it's a member of the Wood family. God damn it, you just hang in there. We'll get you real furniture one day. And I look at the mattress on the floor. I go, God, Joe, you're sleeping on the floor. It said, that's okay. We'll get you box springs. We'll get you up off the floor. You just hang in there. It made an unacceptable situation completely acceptable. It changed the way I saw my life, and it made it okay. I came to A through an awakening in 1977. And I didn't know what I was getting into. I found out about AA through my mother. My mother got sober in 1971. She just died a few years ago. She had 46 years of sobriety. And we knew she went to AA. We didn't really understand what alcoholism was. We just thought she was nuts. We just thought she was crazy. And we knew she was crazy because her mother was in a state mental institution, and she acted like her mother when she drank. Now, my mother used to drink cases of Carling Black Label beer and eat black mollies. They had speed for everything, for toxemia, to losing weight. Doctors would write scripts to women for speed all the time back in the 60s. And my mom looked like she was either going to pass out or run a marathon. You know, she didn't know when she was coming or going. But when she got sober, we thought she was crazy, but we saw the change in my mother. My mother was about 5'3", weighed 190 pounds from drinking all that beer, wore one of those big smocks because she couldn't find the right clothes. She was so overweight. She was nervous, and you know, she was a mess. And she went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and me and my brother and my dad said, she's crazy. But over a period of time, we watched a transformation in my mother. The spiritual awakening sometimes looks different in women than it does men. Men just take a bath, change underwear. Women get pretty, you know, and she went from 190 pounds to about 110. This was in 1971. She wore white go-go boots with mini skirts. She had her hair made all nice. She was wearing makeup. You could see the whites of her eyes. And we thought, she's crazy, but she's pretty crazy. Now we could see the change in her, and we didn't know that that was Alcoholics Anonymous. We didn't know that was sobriety. So the person I turned to after I had the awakening was the one what we thought was crazy. And that's how I found out about Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, April the 10th, 1977. I'm 22. It's an unusually warm Sunday in April. I have bib overalls on with nothing underneath, no shirt, no underwear, no socks, an old pair of worn out earth shoes, hair's out to here. I used to have one of those big afros. And I'm sitting in my first meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in the front row. I didn't know any better. I just sat down in the first seat. And everybody there was old. I mean, anybody over 30 when you're 22 is old. And there was this guy, he was old. He was 50. And the white part of his eye, the sclera, had grown over his iris. And I said, what happened to your eye? And he said, well, my wife had gotten so frustrated and sick from my drinking in 20 years. She waited for me to pass out on the couch and she poured sulfuric acid in my eye. I went, damn, what? Well, I thought, what have I gotten myself into here? And then the woman next to him was a self-proclaimed psychic. A guy next to her was the historian for the Delta Queen riverboat. A guy next to him, it was a Buddhist. He just got out of the penitentiary after doing 7 years. And the guy giving the talk that night, the guy that gave the talk that night is the reason why I'm here. He's why I'm here. All these years later, along with all those other people, how they treated me and how they talked to me is why I'm your speaker tonight. Don had, he did 5 years in Eddyville Maximum Security Penitentiary. I'd never been to prison in my life. His nose was off to the side. Somebody broke it with a tire iron. He had gotten drunk in a bar and a guy broke his nose with a tire iron. He got out of the hospital. He started drinking, went looking for the guy. And he finally found him. He tied him to a railroad track in Newport, Kentucky, and sat there and waited for the train. Now I'm thinking, what in the hell have I got myself into here? I'm thinking, what? This is Alcoholics Anonymous? What is this? But that guy that night, he must have just gotten a sponsor. And it was important to him to let everybody know he had a sponsor. Get a sponsor, get a sponsor, get a sponsor. I thought, well, I might not have underwear, but God damn it, I'm going to have a sponsor before I get out of here. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to get one. And I turned to the guy next to me after the meeting. I said, would you be my sponsor? Not knowing what it was. And he said, yes. And he was my sponsor all the way up to the day he died 5 years ago. He introduced me to the big book. He told me about what he did. He didn't tell me what to do. And this is huge. This is important for a guy like me. A guy like me is very, very rigid, very, if I think you're trying to help me, it looks like you're trying to hurt me. I've got like a spiritual dyslexia. It's kind of backwards. And he sat there and he told me what he did. He said, I try to hit a meeting every day. I talk to my sponsor on a regular basis. I go down to the workhouse, local jail, and we do the mental institution down the street here once a week. He said, I've got a home group. I've taken the steps. And he said, here's this book. And he slid the big book across the table. And he says, I read this and I try to do what it says to do. You might want to try it. And I thought, this guy's nice. Apparently he doesn't really know what my problem is. It's obvious I need underwear. I need a job. I need a car. I need something, but I don't need a book that doesn't have any pictures in it. Okay. And I thought, well, he's nice. I really didn't understand what was going on. And everybody there that day, not one of them told me what to do. Not one told me what to do. They all spoke about themselves. Textbook, 7th chapter, working with others. Tell them what you've done. Tell them what your experience has been. Because if you just started telling me what to do, you would have seen the back of my head and I'd have walked away. Because I don't respond to tell. Well, I don't back then. I didn't respond to tell. My mind didn't work like that. I was sick and didn't know I was sick. So I went in and out of AA for 1.5 years before I got sober. And to make a long story short, I got sober on October the 5th, 1978. I'd gone through a hospital. I went through all that stuff. And I didn't know I was going to get sober. I know our book says we had to concede to our innermost selves we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. That's information. And I can't tell anybody how to do that. I was sitting in my sponsor's car after the meeting, outside the meeting. And I'm in bad shape. I smell funny. I'm shaking. I'm smoking one cigarette right after another. I don't have a job. I don't have a car. I have no education. I have enough money put aside for my room for 3 weeks. And that's it. That's all. I don't know how I came up with that. And he said, I want to thank you, Joe. You helped save my life this past year. Now I'm in bad shape. I just wanted to spit at him. What do you mean help you dummy? I said, oh, really, Mike? How's that? And I'm smoking a cigarette. And he goes, yeah, he said, I made a deal with God. You saved my mom. I'll stay sober. She had leukemia and she died. And I was going to go get me a bottle of Jack Daniels, Joe. And he said, you came back into A and I saw the shape you were in. And he said, my God, that's the last thing I need in my life. Thanks. You really teach me a lot. Now, here's a guy, he's thanking me for saving his life. But in my twisted, warped mind, I thought this son of a bitch is using me. He's hustling me. I didn't mind somebody, I didn't mind hustling somebody else, but you're hustling me. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I thought to myself, I'm going to do everything you said you did. I'm going to smoke the same cigarette you smoke. I'm going to go to the same meetings you go to. I'm going to read that dumb book that doesn't have a picture in it. I'm going to do everything you do. And when it doesn't work out, I go, who's helping who now, you big dummy? And I've been sober ever since that day, October 5th, 1978, by taking action that didn't seem like it had anything to do with my life at all. I was going to prove to him this wasn't going to work. Another thing that happened early in my sobriety had a profound effect on me. He said, look, you've been in and out of AA 20 or 30 times now. You're not a new guy. I'm not a taxi. I'm not going to come pick you up. You know where it's at. You want it. You come get it. And if you get to the meeting, I'll get you home. I said, all right, that's fair. I was sober about 10 days and the meeting's over, and here he was standing up by the podium, and I thought, well, let's see if this guy's telling the truth or not. So I went up to him, just arrogant and loud. Made it to the meeting, Mike. Can you give me a ride home? He said, yeah. So we're sitting outside. He had a 1972 orange Nova with mag wheels, 8-track stereo, and air conditioning. I thought, this guy has got it going on, man. And I'm sitting there in his car, and I thought, he really is going to give me a ride home. But he stopped. And he hid the key in the ignition, and before he turned it on, he said, there's something I need to tell you as your sponsor. I said, well, what? Well, what's that? He said, I need to promise you that if you make AA the most important thing in your life, above everything else, you'll never have to worry about a job, Joe. You'll never have to worry about relationships. You'll never have to worry about all that stuff. It'll all be taken care of for you. I promise you. And for a split second, my mind opened up and I thought, this guy's telling me the truth. And then boom, it slammed shut. And I thought, come on, man, I got to do laundry. My landlord don't want me doing laundry after 8 o'clock. But he made me a promise. I had like a schizophrenic approach to AA. It was, I'll show you. I'm going to do what you do. I don't think this crap will work too. You promise. You promised. And it was kind of like this ping pong back and forth in my head. And about 30 days sober, I was ready to drink. I said, I'm getting ready to drink, Mike. I know what that feels like. What did you do when you got like that? He says, I wrote that inventory. You've been reading that book? I said, yeah, I read it, but I can't remember anything, Mike. I read a paragraph and I forget it, and I got to read the paragraph over, and I just get upset and throw the book. I said, I can't get it. My mind won't work. And he became my big book. He made taking the steps as simple as a walk through the park. And I wrote that inventory. I thought, you need me to stay sober like you say you do. Listen to this. And I started, I'll tell him the truth. I bet you've never heard any of this stuff before. And I went and read it to him the next day. And I didn't feel anything. But you know what my reflection was? You know, it's talk six step talks about reflecting about the first 5 steps. I'm going back to my room. I thought, I cannot believe I told that guy all that stuff. What did I tell him? That was dumb. He could blackmail you, man. You can't tell people what you told him. I mean, that was my reflection of the first 5 steps. That's where I was on the path. And I said the 7-step prayer, what I thought was a 7-step prayer, which wasn't the 7-step prayer at all. I said, God help me. And that isn't what the prayer is saying at all, but I think I was sitting back just chilling going, I know you don't understand the prayer. I just wanted to hear you ask. I'll take care of you until your mind clears up. And I went on to start making these amends because I knew it wasn't going to work. I was so sure it wasn't going to work. It hadn't worked the last 20 times. I'm going to show this guy it doesn't work. And the next day, I saw him at the AA clubhouse. Now I know what I told him. And he was happy to see me. It's like he hit the lottery. Like, hey, man, how you doing? You want to go out and eat with us after the meeting? And I thought, I know what I told him. And I thought, something's wrong here. And it became clear to me that he didn't love me before what I had done or where I'd been. He loved me because I was an alcoholic and I was there with him. And a week later, he walked in and he was happy to see me again. And I thought, wow, this guy just wants me to be in his life. He saw the worst of me and he's seen the best of me, and he still wants me to be in his life. Do you know what kind of effect that had on me? Everybody talks about the fourth column. For Christ's sake, do you know how I was so lonely? I felt so bad about myself. I thought, you just the rottenest fool. God, I want anybody's life. I don't want mine. And he loved me anyway. He walked me out of that queer world of alcoholism into me being able to stand on my own 2 feet and be happy with who I am. That's huge. And you know, when I realized he didn't judge me and make fun of me or call me names after I wrote that inventory, I read that inventory to him, he had me in the palm of his hand. I trusted that guy. It's the first guy I've trusted since I was a little kid. He didn't tell me what to do with my life. He didn't belittle me. He didn't judge me. Didn't call me names. He said, hey, come on, man, come be with us. Come be with us. And he showed me how to talk to alcoholics. He showed me how to do the big book. He showed me by his own personal example how to live a sober life. And little by little, I started doing what Mike did. And you know what? I wanted to be Mike. I saw no value in being who I am. I was sober about 2 months, and his sponsor walked up to me one day after a meeting. And he says, name 3 people you respect the most in Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't tell me who they are. Just let me know when you have their names in your head. And I thought for a minute, yeah, I got them, Bob. And he says, all I want to know is, are you one of the 3? And he walked away. I thought, what is this, some kind of trick question for newcomers or what? Yeah, when I look back on it, it's sad that I was not one of the 3, because that says I respected everybody more than I did myself. I had an awakening at 2 months sober. I didn't immediately feel this, oh God, I feel like part of the world and everything's okay. A couple months had gone, a month had gone by since I took the steps the best I knew how at 30 days sober. I mean, we just took action and did it. And thank God it doesn't say you have to understand it. It just says we want you to follow. Just come on and follow. You know, the information will come later. Following's first. And I was working, I had gotten a job down in the projects, a rough part of town. And a guy in A gave me a job down there out of a boiler room. We heated all the different buildings in the city. And I came out of a building one night, and just a few days ago, an 82-year-old woman had been shot and killed for $8. Somebody had slaughtered a goat in one of the basement rooms. I mean, just people throwing garbage out of windows. And I come out of this building at 2 a.m. I was supposed to do this route to check these heating systems. And it was snowing. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. I'd never seen snow that pretty. And I looked around, and I was very aware of where I was. And I was aware of the fact that I was okay. I was okay. There was nothing wrong with me. Now, I owed a lot of people money. There were relationships that were broken that were never going to be mended, and other ones were going to take a long time to straighten out. I hadn't established my position in society, my education level, any of that stuff. And that's the beauty of it. I realized I didn't have to know any of that to be okay with Joe. I thought I'd lost my mind. I talked to my sponsor the next day and told him what had happened. He said, it sounds like you're free. I said, I am. Because I'd gone in and out of AA many times thinking I was sober, and I got it this time. He goes, no, Joe, he said, from the way you talk, it's what our program does. The steps remove the obsession, and they render the sufferer happy, whole, and useful. Sounds like you're free. You like that? I go, well, yeah, it's amazing. And a matter of fact, I wouldn't want to say this to anybody in AA, but I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. I know it's a day at a time, but I have a feeling like I don't have to fight that animal. He says, you're right. He said, you know, you're free to do anything you want as long as you put AA the first in your life. Your activity in AA, you're sharing the steps with other alcoholics. Make that number 1, and you're free to do anything you want. The right woman comes along, get married. You want to start a business, start a business. You want to go to college, go to college. AA comes first. Can you do that? I go, well, I've been doing it for 2 months. And he says, that's good, because it's always just today anyway. And he walked away. And I realized the thing that he promised me in his car was starting to come true. I went, Oh my God, I didn't know that it was all going to be taken care of that way. I thought it was all going to be taken care of by me getting a job and a girlfriend and a car. And that wasn't it at all. It's the promises that we hear all the time in AA that people want to scream. We think not. You ever hear that people do that stuff? Those promises are a description of how I've changed on the inside. The outside world might not have changed, but my inward reality is different. I feel okay. I'm in the ghetto at making $4 and something an hour, and I feel fine. I'm not afraid of nothing. I don't want to drink. I know I'm a part of the world. I feel fantastic. And that's what alcohol used to do for me. It's the same feeling I got from alcohol. It just took longer. And as a result of that, I grabbed onto this. I wouldn't let go. Abe came before anything. I mean, and I'll tell you what, I've been sober 45 years. I go to 5 to 7 meetings a week. And I watch these people fall into what I call sober insanity over the years. They're active in AA. By God, we're doing what the big book talks about. We're working with drunks. Nothing so much ensures immunity, intensive work with other alcoholics. And all of a sudden they stop coming. They stop coming. The thing that put their life back together, they stop doing. Well, you know, little Susie's got Girl Scouts Friday. I can't come on that Friday. Or my business is taking up too much of my time. I can't really, well, you know, A is about finding balance, right? I mean, I hear people say that, but anytime they talk about balance, that means get rid of AA meetings. And I don't know why they do that, but they do it. And then you hear people after 40 years go back out and 15 years go back out. And I watch these over the years, and I don't apologize for being happy. You know, as I'm sitting here talking with you guys, I'm going to tell you the way I feel. It's completely the opposite of the way I felt when I got sober. I feel like I'm sitting in my living room having coffee with friends. Isn't that wild? I've never met any of you people except Bill and Jason, you know what I mean? But I feel like we could just sit there and chew the fat like we've been friends for a long time. I'm not worried about how I look. I'm not really worried about how I sound. I don't worry about the clothes I have on or what I'm going to sound like. When I was new, I worried about all those things. I was just so insecure, and I just felt inferior. I've yet to meet an alcoholic that didn't have that sense of inadequacy when they get sober. And I know what that is now. It's lack of power. Lack of power. And our book talks about that. When the spiritual maladies overcome, we straighten out mentally, physically. The spiritual malady is I don't have the power to fix myself. That's the spiritual malady. And these steps get me in contact with this power that I don't even understand. I'll tell you what, I understand God less today than I ever have in my whole life and rely on him more than I ever have. I can't put God in a box. I can't just, you know, I've investigated a lot of things in my life. All I know is the thing I was looking for outside was never outside. It was always inside of me. The part of God that I was looking for was inside of me. Read the spiritual appendix in the back of the book. Our members tapped an unsuspected inner resource, not an outer resource, an inner resource that they identified with the God of their understanding. And I think that was that feeling of well-being, that feeling of being enthusiastic about who I am in my life was inside of me. And AA kind of opened that up. It got rid of the chain of all these defects and pushed them to the side just long enough to when I looked in the mirror, I go, I don't want to be anybody else. I want to be who I am. And there was a day I'd want anybody's life but mine. I've got about 5 minutes here. I'll tell you something I did the other day. I'm going to tell on myself. You'll like this. If you can't show your ass at AA, where are you going to go? I told Bill about this the other day. I was just so blown away by how I am, how stubborn and rigid my thinking is. You know, like most people, I'm judgmental. I'm not as judgmental as I used to be. And I've known this woman for 25 years. And in my mind, I had her sized up as uneducated, street kind of girl, you know, that kind of thing. And I treated her accordingly. I mean, I was nice to her and I was cordial. But that's how I saw her. And I heard her last year talking. It kind of reinforced that, yeah, that's who she is. And I heard her speak 3 weeks ago. And it was the best AA talk I've heard in a long, long time. And come to find out, this girl that I had sized up as some kind of country girl, uneducated street gal, turns out she went to college and she's got a degree in finance, and she was a fraud investigator for Cincinnati Financial Corporation. I walked out of that meeting, went, for 25 years, I thought she was that way, and she was never that way at all. And I thought to myself, wow, I wonder how many other people I judged and they're not that way at all. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then it went, I wonder what part of me that I still judge in myself. Oh man, I bet you I still do. I still bet you I judge myself to a certain degree. And I think that's the spiritual challenge for me lately, is to keep an open mind, to try to keep the judgment out of the way about you or about me and my life, and just see what God wants me to see. I'm going to end with talking about meditation. I never really meditated a lot till about 2007. And I do it almost every day. I'm about 98%. And one meditation I had not too long ago, I've got guided meditations. I'll listen to stuff to start my day out. During the meditation, I heard this voice says, I want you to pray 6 times a day. And even my ego in meditation goes, that's a lot, isn't it? And I said, well, what do you want me to pray? And the voice says, I want you to pray, help me to hear, see, and be who you want me to hear, see, and be. I said, you want me to do that 6 times a day? Said, yeah, well, how long does that prayer last? I said, well, about 5 seconds. I said, you don't have 30 seconds to talk to me? I thought, well, no, I've got shit to worry about. I mean, I'm a busy man. I got really stuff to worry about. I don't know if I could fit 30 seconds in. That was my ego, even in meditation. And so lately, when I get upset in meetings or get uncomfortable, and you know what I'm talking about. You hear so-and-so, you go, oh, there's this gal. Here's that guy again. He says the same thing. I have been going, help me to hear, see, and be who you want me to hear, see, and be. And I'm here to tell you, it's changed the way I hear people. It's changed the way I see people. And it's become a valuable tool to me in my sobriety today. And I highly recommend some form. I think anything that calms the mind down is good. You know, the mind's going like this all over the, you can't really solve too many problems. With the mind's calm, everything's real easy. And I've been doing that lately. So I'll end with this. You have no clue how much I love you. You have no clue how aware I am that I'm nothing without you. I know that more than I've ever known it before in my life. I have no story without you. Without you, I'm the old man in the sleeping room with all his belongings and his whole life sitting on the dresser saying, I used to be somebody. I used to have this and I used to have that. I used to have people call me in AA. But they don't call me anymore because they know I either can't get sober or don't want to get sober. And that's why I'm your speaker tonight. I love you so much. I want you to walk away from this meeting knowing how much you mean to me. I can't put it into words, but I feel it. I feel it. I feel it from the bottom of my heart. And I think it's the place where this God lives. I think it's the part of me where I know that I want to be me and I want to be with you. And I can't thank you enough for listening to me. Thank you.